120 years ago, we had the Civil War, and that's where death changed in America.
Okay, tell me about this. I'm curious of the history.
Yeah, so 120 years ago, before the Civil War, Grandma died in the house. You watched the whole process. You helped her labor her death. They buried that Grandma in the backyard, and that was and then your sister was born. So you watched. It was all happening in that one house. And so during the Civil War, the North and the South, there were train conductors, and they were not wanting to to put any bodies in transit anymore because of the smell. They were like, we're not. And so families were like, I want my dead husband, please. And the train conductors were in refusal because it was just not very pleasant.
Yeah.
And so Abraham Lincoln hired doctors to start embalming bodies. And that's when funeral homes, undertakers, mortuaries, now death became a business. And after the Civil War, they were like, well, this is my cash grab. Like, I don't want this to end. And so they would actually embalm bodies and put them in windows. Abraham Lincoln was the first president to be embalmed and brought around the whole country and shown off. And so we were a country in grief, and we willingly handed that over to a business. And then we just forgot. And then it became something like, just very automatic. And now we're here 120 years later in a different cycle. And we're like, but wait, there's something missing. There's something missing in my initiation into adulthood. And that is being with death.
Do you think it's the embalming process, or that there's a corporate
It's the
side
corporation.
of it?
It's the corporation. So like what I see now in modern day, how the corporation has gone into, I would say, not being helpful and more of a poison is, when I see people who are going from treatment into hospice, all of a sudden their numbers put into some kind of database, and you have hospices all over the county trying to sell them and reaching them in a very vulnerable position to like, go with our hospice, go here. They're now people that are being sold on stuff. And there's very little emphasis on, are you okay? How are you? Our mortuary offers group healing sessions every month. And, when you come with our program, we support you emotionally. Like there's that piece that's missing from the system.
One of the things that I've heard, which I think is true, is that, we have our hospitals, which do amazing things, but there's, that there are places where life is brought into the world and places where life exits the world, and they lack the temple aspect where that might have happened it happened everywhere in the past, but they're like that sort of sacred ritual can be clipboarded and reduced into, just check here. Okay, we're going to get them in this urn, this thing. What would be a better way of doing that?
Well, I think
should the family be more involved?
Yeah, I think wherever somebody dies, it's perfect. Whether that's in a hospital or they're in the backyard in Hawaii, stargazing, like the best, most beautiful scenario in the world. Wherever it's happening, it's sacred because we're the temple, we're the batteries, we're the extra energy in the room that can really make a difference by our own nervous system and regulating and helping that other person regulate through us. So, I guess my best advice for a family going through the process and wanting to bring in more sacredness would just ask that question, what could bring in more sacredness? And then close your eyes and listen. And it's going to be different for each person. For Cousin Eddie, it could be like, oh, go and get his pictures of his boats and bring it in the room.
Play a song.
For Auntie Rebecca, it might be, let's bake her favorite pies, even though she can't eat. Let's get that smell in the room. Right? Like let's get that going for her so she can be in that moment. If it's for Aunt Julie, it might be, let's go get boxes of sand from the beach so she can put her hands in the sand one last time. So there's going to be something different that's sacred for each person, but you just have to ask and listen and then do it.
It's even just thinking of how simple the things that you mentioned are. It's moving to think of what you would want at the end. Sand or the smell of a pie or that's deeply.
And that's what we do. We help people create vigils. We help them create legacy projects. So, whatever that legacy projects have its own voice. So you just ask what that is and it'll show up and you'll start to work with families with that. But vigil.
Does that mean something that like persists after that?
Yeah.
Can you tell me like what does legacy project mean?
Oh my gosh. Legacy projects are just as across the board as the things I just mentioned with the sand and the pie. It could be a video. It could be future letters that you write to your grandkids. And, you know, if you're dying and, you know, in 3 years they're graduating college, writing that letter in the future or for the wedding or the future moments. It could be a certain day every year where the family comes together to wear funny hats because that's what you liked. You know what I mean? It could be whatever the legacy is. It's something that continues to bring in your essence long after you're gone.
Got it.
It's tied into your dharma, really.
And well, even the suggestion to do that, I see as something that a death tool would bring because you're going through grief. You're like probably not even eating. And the idea to necessarily write letters or create a video is just so far out
it's so far out. And so you're going to touch on people. So I never bring it up. It's on my website of things that are available for the client to see before they hire me of what my scope of practice is.
Yeah.
But a legacy project is something, like I said, it has its own voice and it comes in when it comes in. How it comes in. I've had the legacy projects bring out family drama that they were trying to squash, but it needed to come up so that they could close out this part of that relationship or that rough part that was more fortified than soft. And so the legacy project can be super triggering. With my school, with my students, I teach them like not everyone's going to want to do a legacy project, but just be listening and looking and just making notice of like who that person is. And even if nothing's made, like take in that person's legacy while you're serving them. Know who you're serving. So it might just be an internal process that you see. And then years later, the family comes to you and they're like, we want to create that video, you know? So it's its own tied, a legacy project.
Wow.